please welcome back to the stage your MC, Jacqueline Riley.
Hi. All right. Did everybody get a coffee? Get a little hyped up on some caffeine? Great. Well, this is going to be a really good one. So next up, we're talking about decisions during disasters and disruptions, and I'm challenging anyone to that as a tongue twister contest later tonight. But please help me welcome to the stage Eleanor Waddell from Avendra. They are sponsoring this panel. Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I have to apologize in the beginning. I get laryngitis about once every 5 years, and lo and behold, I woke up this morning and it's today. But I think my voice will last, and I think you're in for a real treat with our guests. So I'd like to welcome our panelists up to the stage. Allison O'Connor, she's a former global vice president for public relations at Ritz Carlton. We also, thank you, enjoy. We also have Martin Smith. He is the general manager of this lovely property that we're enjoying, Eden Rock. And then also Gamal Fakih, who is vice president of operations for luxury at Marriott International. So thank you for joining us. We are going to be chatting today about what we consider not a glamorous topic, but an absolutely crucial one. And what we've all been through in the last few years, it's not just the typical kind of events that we're seeing in maybe a hurricane or some other kind of event, but really extraordinary ones. I think everyone with our dear colleagues in Hawaii who probably prepared and had experienced both hurricanes and volcano eruptions never really anticipated that it would be a wildfire that would be so incredibly devastating. So the challenge is to really be prepared for whatever life may throw at you is really crucial. And we have some panelists who have just years of experience and really extraordinary experiences they've managed through, and they're going to share their insights with you. Our goal today is to have them share those personal experiences and then help you understand how do we get prepared. Oh gosh. Wow. We have given you something when you walked in the door. You might want to open that up and then share a little bit about it. Thank you. Thank you. You can bring the lights up now. We obviously prepared for this event, but you can't always be prepared. We also, I think today, had heard, some of you may have heard the fire alarms. You just never know when you're operating in iconic properties. There are things that just happen, and how you prepare yourself, your staff, your hotel, even the communities in which you operate. So let's get started with our esteemed panel. So Martin, why don't we kick it off with you? If you could tell us, you've had some very interesting experiences in the hotels that you've been proud to be a part of. But if you could maybe share with our audience kind of what your experiences were, what's your favorite disaster, and how did you help get your staff prepared for that?
Well, I think that we'll start with the favorite. It's the one that never happened. So to go back to 2005, I'm going to date myself. September of 2005, Florida had 4 hurricanes in the month of September. We started Labor Day weekend with Charlie. So I was in the Bellevue Biltmore Hotel on the other coast, and we had an evacuation on the barrier islands. The storm was coming. So we prepared as normal. But they also, when they evacuated the islands, we decided to take the ballroom, lay down tarps in the ballroom, and invite all the neighbors. If they had large dogs, they could come up with their dogs in the ballroom so that we could cater to them. We also, made it known to them that we would have a local rate so that they could enjoy. We hired clowns and entertainers for the children. We hired musicians. If we're going to be here, we're going to have fun while we're here. Everything was prepared, everybody was having fun, and 2 hours before Tampa, Charlie just turned and went to Gasparilla. Unfortunately for everybody there, the people just stayed and had fun. And so we prepared, we were ready for food, entertainment, to keep the guests happy. The storm didn't occur, and everybody had a good time.
What do you do when you've had some storms that have hit, though? Kind of, how do you find that preparedness has helped when there has been an event that occurred?
So unfortunately, I was in Puerto Rico for Maria and Irma. So on the east coast, on the east side, we got Irma first. On the 7th, we cleaned up, and unfortunately on the 17th, we got another one. So, but making sure that you identify the team that is going to be on property that takes care of your asset and your guests. So you need to make sure first, identify the team that's going to stay on property. Make sure you have a plan for when you're going to go out after the storm is finished. Everybody always wants to go out too early, right? So planning and being ready. And then immediately after, particularly in Maria, it was so bad. It took us 2 days to get to the main road. Oh. So we had to clean out to the main road so we could get water trucks and diesel trucks into the property. But things that we did is we made sure that we knew the staff didn't have power. They didn't have petrol. So whatever petrol supplies we had, we were giving gallons to the staff. We made sure they left every day with ice. They left with a meal at night to feed their family because there was no power on the island. So being prepared allowed us to take care of them, which in essence takes care of your asset. So it was just preparing in advance. And for me, it's hiring the correct people. So we were very lucky. The engineer and the director of security have had a lot of experience. I think we talked before about military people who are very logistically driven. And I would say advice to anybody from any storm is take yourself out of the equation, because we as hotel GMs are emotional. Leave the chairs for 1 more hour, take care of the guests, stay open for 1 more. And an engineer or a director of security that's military based is, we change to a warning, the pool is closed now. They do things very methodical, and they keep us out of trouble. So give control to the people that are trained to do it.
And Martin, you've talked about a number of constituencies. It could be your associates, it could be guests. Allison, you've helped many hotels prepare for crisis communications and dealt with all this, what's important to all the stakeholder groups. Can you share with us a little bit your insight and how to think about being prepared, what to do when you're in the midst of a crisis from a communication standpoint?
Sure. So first of all, when you think about crisis communications, think regular communications, all the same adjectives apply. Clarity, be concise, be accurate. Accuracy is essential. But then there are some that are even more exaggerated at the time of a disaster. So empathy, leading with empathy, and be really prompt, because things are changing by the minute. You don't have time, really, to sit and wait. You have to be continuously on top of what's happening. And it doesn't matter what the disaster is, anything from natural disasters, such as hurricanes, through to things that are happening globally, global unrest. It could also be something that's a lot more local to a hotel, a tragic accident, or an emergency health situation. Any one of those things can drastically impact your reputation. And it's how you deal with things, the clarity, the sharpness of your message, and the transparency that builds trust. Back to that word, trust is essential at the time of a crisis. And for internal and external, the people staying with you expect you to be on top of these things and tell them what is happening, what to expect, what's next, how you're looking after them. But the people working for you also look to you to do that as well. You have to be very open and transparent with them, and most importantly, be aligned in everything that you're saying.
Do you find today, since we all can get the news in like 2 seconds on our phone, does today present any different challenges than maybe previously, and how people should think about what they're communicating and how they're doing it?
Very much so. I was actually speaking fairly recently about the biggest challenges facing communications and communicators today, and I would say it is misinformation, right? And if you think about AI as a great example, or the huge benefits of AI, also some of the disadvantages are, the spreading of misinformation, visuals that aren't entirely accurate, and how you deal with that. But for certain, the people owning the message, whether it's a property or a company or a region, you have to be prompt and demonstrate that you are owning the narrative, that you are in control of it, that you give frequent updates, that you are transparent, and just have people that know what they're doing. If you don't have nominated spokespeople, and find them, train them, don't leave them out there, but help them prepare for these things when they happen. But also, make sure that your employees can speak about where the truth is really coming from. That's also important, especially to your guests.
Awesome. Gamal, we've spoken about the guests and other constituencies. A large part of the help that we get when we're in kind of an emergency situation are the utility companies and supply partners. Can you maybe talk a little bit about, in your experiences, particularly in the Caribbean, how you've worked with those kinds of stakeholders, both preparing for, during, and maybe even when you're starting to recover from a disaster or a disruption?
Correct. In some areas like the Caribbean, as you rightly said, it's very easy to prepare. I remember back in the 90s when I first worked in the region, we used to call emergency plans. Mm-hmm. We don't call them emergency plans anymore, we call them preparedness plan, because in the Caribbean, more or less, if you're on the hurricane belt, mm-hmm. you're gonna have 17 storms, named storms on average every year. 7 of them will go category 3 or over. So, you can prepare for that. So I think it's critical, everything that we do before to prepare. We have rooms in every single hotel where we have all the supplies that we might need in case of an emergency, from water to fuel, to no perishable items. Every single thing that you can anticipate, obviously we need to be prepared for. But also all these contracts that we sign with our partners, like Avendra, for example, all our supplies, mm-hmm. what type of supplies we need to have in the hotel, emergency services, evacuation services. So it is very important that we are prepared because we know it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. The problem is when we have a disruption of business that we are not prepared for, mm-hmm. right? So it is critical that we have the preparation and we have the education of our associates, very important. In some markets, like in the US, you can afford to have a good part of your employees from military with this type of backgrounds. You don't have that in the Caribbean. You don't have that in Latin America, right? So education is critical. We have teams in our hotels that they do drills every day, not only fire drills, but emergency drills, hurricane drills, and being constantly ready for whatever it happens. So that's key, obviously, for being able to serve through the emergency with success, right?
Okay, great. And Martin, I think in an earlier conversation, you had shared how important it is to have those relationships established early on, so that you're not just now forming a relationship with that key supplier or the utility company when you happen to need it. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you've gone about doing that in areas?
The Caribbean teaches us. It's like there's not a lot of options. So if you use a water or diesel company to supply you, make sure they're paid in 14 days. Or if the owner has a dispute with them, make sure you fix it on the side anyway, because when you need them, they're going to go to the people that paid them, that have relationships. Mm-hmm. So the disaster management company, the water company, the diesel company, the power company, the staffing agencies, you've got to have good relationships, because when you're going to need them, they have a million different clients, and they're going to go to the people that took care of them in the past. Mm-hmm. So relationships for us, I think we learned in the Caribbean, are very important, because the suppliers are limited.
Correct.
Maybe for each of you, does one example stand out of where you really were in the throes of something and a supply partner or a utility, whatever it was, or a stakeholder group kind of really performed well for you?
I'm sorry.
Sorry. Sorry about that. Can you think of an example to share with the group of when a supply partner may have performed really well for you when you were in the throes of one of the disasters, perhaps?
For me, it'll be easy. It'll be Maria and my diesel provider. We've talked about those relationships. He was a friend, the largest trucking company. I called him and I said, the government, FEMA, is taking all the diesel, rightly so, for the hospitals, the elderly homes. We need diesel. We have 49 generators at the Bahia Beach St. Regis property. We need diesel to keep running. He said, what I can do is I can send you my small truck, and I'll send it every day. Whatever we have left over from the fleet, whatever I have, I'll send to you. That got us through the first 12 days before the supply chain improved for diesel. So without that relationship, we would have shut down. We'd have had residents and people with nowhere to go.
Awesome. You're all with, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just going to say, for me, it was always journalists.
Okay, yeah.
Right? And it is, PR has a fluffy association, and communications broadly does. And I will tell you, I started my background in food and beverage. I was an operator and was put in PR during the Gulf War. I was parked there until business came back, and I was offended to be put in PR. I thought, oh, I work hard. Why did they put me here? I will tell you, what I've learned since is great communications is essential, but it doesn't happen overnight. Building really strong relationships with credible journalists is essential before a crisis ever happens, right? Making sure that you have that list of people you can call when the chips are down and your name is in question, that will help you out of it because they know better that you speak the truth.
Awesome. What about guests? You're all leading luxury properties and have worked with luxury properties. Is there anything in particular about the luxury guest that you want to, or that you deal with, particularly during a crisis?
I can jump in.
Start?
Yeah, I can jump in. I think reducing headcount is critical from associates, but also from guests. So if we know that something is going to happen, the first thing we do in the hotels, obviously, is look at our bookings, look at our reservations, make sure that we communicate with those guests that will be planning to come to property, and try to reduce as many people as we can on site during the emergency. So, and the guests will need any attention like any other regular guest. They need to feel safe. They need to feel that there is a way to go back home. So that's why it's so important, as Mark was saying, to work with the local authorities to make sure that once the flights are resumed, you can send them back home, you can repatriate them. So I think it's all about the communication you keep with them, those that are in the hotel, and then obviously try to avoid more guests coming if you know that you're going to go through an emergency situation. Sometimes it's difficult because obviously we don't know if it's going to hit. Maybe it's going to go another way. You don't want to lose business. And it's a decision that you have only seconds to make as a general manager of a property. So it is very important that you use your common sense and you try to reduce whatever difficulties you will have to handle the situations once it's on house.
I think I'm going to steal your thunder. Communication. With it, just having that, we know that there's an update every 3 hours when it goes to storm mode, right? So putting those letters out, old-fashioned way, have the letters ready, have them delivered to the doors. In the Caribbean, we make the assumption the phones are going to go away. Wi-Fi is not going to work all the time. The phones are going to work, so go back to the old-fashioned. Print them, right? So print your base letters ready. Right? Have a set ready, because if the power goes out and you don't have, then you have to fill in the times and dates, but be ready to communicate every 3 to 4 hours. And just be honest. Like, don't promise stuff you can't deliver. They're in a stressful position, so we need to make sure that we're very clear.
And I would say having a plan from a communications perspective, I said it just now, don't wait for the crisis to arrive before you get ready for it. And I know a lot of you have similar experiences. Crisis communications is 90% preparation, 10% execution. As stressful as it is in the moment that something is happening, and it's all hands on deck at that time, preparation is everything. And you need to know the business. A great comms person knows exactly what is happening around the hotel, because you may or may not be based in the hotel when something's going on. So you really need to know your product and what you're working with.
Could each of you maybe share an experience of going through something kind of with the audience, just, what, maybe even recovering in particular? So after an event has occurred, you're there, now you've got to get out of it. You've got to get the hotel ready or get your associates back or back on their feet. How do you go about that?
I can start. I'm going to go back to 4th of November 2017. So I was working at the Ritz Carlton in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. And those of you that remember the news, you might remember that day the hotel was taken over by the royal protocol of Saudi Arabia, so the government of Saudi Arabia, and the hotel became a jail, right, for 100 days. So I remember that day I was with my family having Friday brunch. In the Middle East, Friday is like our Sundays here, it's the weekend. So we were having Friday brunch, we got a call from my boss. We need to evacuate the hotel, 250 rooms in 4 hours. We have to put them in other hotels, relocate them in other hotels. We did not know what was going on. We knew only like a week after what was going on in the hotel, and that was changing every day. So when you have a hurricane, it's very easy to prepare, but when you have a disruption like this, it is very difficult, right? I think that the major enemy on this type of situations is uncertainty. You don't know what's going on. You want to get the news, but you don't know what is the right source of news, right? Because obviously everybody wants to be the first one to the press. Every press agency is the first one that wants to put the news out there, right? So I think in situations like that, that hotel, so we handed over to the government. We had to handle the situation for 100 days. We have 500 dignitaries and royals staying in the hotel, in jail. We had to feed them. We had the army taking over the whole hotel. We had a hospital that could do a open heart surgery in the parking lot of the hotel. So, it was really a crisis situation, and we did not know what was going on, because obviously it's very confidential business. We are there to serve. We are not there to know what's going on. So I think communication, obviously externally, is important. In a situation like that, that was not important at all, because it was secret, right? Everything was happening with the government of Saudi Arabia. But the communication internally, allocation of responsibilities, Mark mentioned something very important. In an emergency, we don't need heroes, right? We just need to have a team that everybody understands what is your responsibility on the middle of the crisis. We create a command center. We had meetings in the morning. We had meetings in the afternoon. We were playing attack on how to get whatever information we could get so we can plan meals, we can plan whatever we had to plan around. So I think the internal communication, how you rally the troops on the middle of the emergency, who takes which role, who's going to deal with the enemy, whatever the enemy is, who's going to deal internally, I think that's very important. And not play heroes, because obviously we just want to succeed on whatever we are doing. So for me, that's critical, how we organize and how we allocate responsibilities on the middle of the crisis.
Okay.
I think so. For, again, my way of doing things, I've always looked at it doing this way, is the first morning when the staff come back in. It's like you have a lineup that's larger than the normal lineup, so all the staff together. So you explain what's going on, where you stand, so they understand what their job is for the day, and then as soon as we're finished, to make sure HR gets to touch every single employee. How are they? How's their family? What do they need? What can we do for them? And then reach out to all the employees that didn't come to work. There's lots that will not make it to work on that first or second day. How can we help them? What can we do to make it easier on their family? Because they are the ones that are going to take care of our guests. So what can we do to make it better for them? Because sometimes you're amazed that the disaster is going on and they show up to work on a bicycle or however they get there. So it's reaching out to each one individually. How can we make it better for them to get through this?
No, go ahead. I have so many examples. I've got to tell you, it's a pure coincidence that Gamal and I are sat on this stage together today. And I will say, I do think Marriott International is best in class at these issues, the management of them, absolutely superb. We both opened the Ritz Carlton in Doha, Qatar, on October 9th, 2001.
Correct.
So that was right after 9/11, and we were opening an American luxury hotel in the Middle East, in the thick of everything. And so much to talk about, but we opened the hotel successfully. Actually, if I backtrack to 9/11 for a moment, I was in the Dubai property that day, and it was after 6 p.m. for us when that tragedy happened here. And I will tell you, though the world was looking at America and the company was looking at the American hotels and being secure, they didn't forget about us, because it was a little bit like feeling as if you were a sitting duck in an American hotel sat in that region at the time. So I will say the way that was handled was exemplary. But the really interesting time came in February of 2002, when the Iraqi invasion kicked off from the region, and our hotel was headquarters for that. And so that was a really eye-opening experience. And the only reason I raised that is because I thought I knew how to deal with the media and journalists. I've been doing it a long time. But then the world's war correspondents checked in with us, and America's military leaders. Right? And so the dynamics of what we did changed. You have to be very fluid. You have to be very connected to one another. You have to be very accurate. I cannot underscore enough the necessity for accuracy. But yeah, this business affords you to exposure to things you can't even make up.
On a global basis as well. So it's really interesting. I think we all think a disaster is going to be a hurricane or something that is highly predictable to some degree, not the direction it takes, but that it occurs. It's those odd things that come up either because of an event, or even, I know Los Angeles, for example, and some other cities here in the US have had some labor issues recently. And so just getting supplies to the hotel when there's a workforce picketing perhaps is a challenge. And so it does happen at kind of any time. I'll share with you, we worked with our hotels in a city like Los Angeles and tried to figure out from a supply base, we would have, instead of deliveries happening from 10 to 4, they were happening from 11 at night to 3 in the morning. And we got the suppliers to switch everything, because that is when you could actually get the trucks to the hotels. So just thinking, you don't plan for that to happen, but when it does, you just have to, again, be fluid, work with your partners and kind of switch into gears. These stories are fascinating. I think the audience might like to hear one or two more if you just have something kind of really interesting that you've faced. It helps them think about their hotels, their portfolios on a global basis, and kind of what they can look out for and be a norm for. And maybe even focus on what's the biggest thing that went wrong. Or if you could go back and do something differently, is there a situation you'd share with them on how you would kind of, knowing what you know now, what you might do?
There's a lot.
Okay.
Because you learn as you go, right? I talked about 90% preparation. You should all have a playbook. If it's for your property, for your company, for a region like the Caribbean, there should be a playbook that's ready. And I think lack of preparedness in my early communications career is something I would go back and change, because you think you're going to be able to handle it. And yeah, you can't, because you need to have the fundamentals in place so that you have the room in your schedule to pivot to the nuances and the uniqueness of the situation. There are so many things. I will tell you, the big stuff, it's a lot when it's hurricanes and terrorism, but the things that can often do the most harm are the isolated incidents of the property where there is a tragic fatality or something like that. It's as important, if not more important, to spend the time to be thoughtful in your response. And again, I'll underline the word empathy. Put yourself in the shoes of the people going through the situation.
Okay.
Yep, I would say that the same is being prepared. You learn after fortunately, you're sitting up here because we've been through so many of them, is taking that big manual you have and dumbing it down for the staff to, they have one page. Housekeeping has one page.
Okay.
Just one page to follow. Don't make it, the managers, we get this, they give you this book, it's overwhelming. People probably don't read it, right? So dumb it down as best you can and make sure you do rehearsals.
Okay.
Make sure you go through, I mean, I'll tell you a funny story, like satellite phones. Make sure you get satellite phones. Make sure they work.
Okay.
So in the early days, in 2010, 11, we had an issue. We have a satellite phone. They'd been tested, they're good to go. I'd never used a satellite phone. It's like, go to call somebody, I'm standing in the building calling, I think nothing, and it's like, go outside, and it's like, no, a day later, it's like, we can't get you. I'm inside the building. Doesn't work, or you have to be outside with the antenna up. There's simple things that no one told me I needed to do. They just assumed, oh, you're a GM of a hotel in the Caribbean, you can use a satellite phone. I could not, obviously, it didn't work. Teaching, making sure that everybody understands, right? There is a role, and testing everything. Do you test your drains? Do you test your generators? Right? Do your backup systems? Your satellite radios? Do you have a place to go after the storm? Is there an office or a hub where you're going to meet? Is there a team that's assigned to be at the hotel? Is there a meeting space where you're going to meet after the storm? If they can't get, typically an airport or somewhere close that you know is going to be open, there's a place where you can meet to pass messages if you have to.
Awesome.
So trying to make it as simple as possible and then check.
Yes. Well, great. Well, in closing, to help kind of further the conversation and help you be prepared, we actually have Avendra we've created. One of the things we want to do is help you get best prepared. So we've created that guide that you said, that playbook, at least a sample for you. So please stop by our booth and pick up a copy. And then also to continue the conversation, we will be hosting a roundtable. Dorian Murphy, manager for our luxury group, will be spearheading it along with two experts on disaster recovery from United Rentals. So please join us there and continue the conversation. And join me in thanking our panelists, Allison, Martin, and Gamal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.